Okay, Michael, thank you for being in this interview. And you're one of the Margaret River artists that we want to talk about.
Yeah, thanks.
And you refer to yourself as a conceptual artist. Now, the people who are looking at this, what is a conceptual artist?
I suppose the difference between how I work now and how I worked probably 20th century, which dates me a little bit. A lot of my work was object-based, and most of the work I've been doing in the last 15, 17 years or 20 years has been conceptually based or idea-based. So the idea comes first, and then I use whatever medium that suits that idea. So, which has given me the freedom not to be just purely as a sculptor as I first started, but someone where, like a photography or video or installation sculpture or whatever, I just look at using that way of working based on that particular idea.
So what brought about your transition from focusing on objects to running out of your ideas and coming from what you've been thinking about?
I'd like to say when I first went to university in the early 1990s, contributed to that. But one of the things that altered the way I worked was a life issue, dealing with my 4.5-year-old son at the time. Halfway through university, I was doing sculpture, majoring in sculpture, and my son was diagnosed with leukemia. So, and told 6 months to live. He's alive now. He's survived, and I won't go into that story. But it was a very difficult time in my life and my wife's life, and it changed both how we worked. Overnight or over a 12-month period, my studio sort of evolved from a full-on industrial sculpture studio to something where I'd use photography, or I was looking at electronic installation or interactive, and it was because I just couldn't work with those things for a period of time. While I was seriously ill, I had to look at other ways of working. And I think it was just as much going through the course at Curtin University as much as my life, the drama that was happening in my life that changed the way I worked. And so and that's when I started working with ideas more. And
so was that a desire to try and find meaning?
Yeah, because our lives, well, mine and Penny's life was destroyed in a way. Penny couldn't use paint anymore because there's all these negating factors that we couldn't do because we were running back and forwards to a hospital trying to keep in maintaining his health, as he went through this really difficult life-threatening period. So, and that really affected the way I work, and it changed her work and it changed my work. But I look back, and adversity has a really positive effect on a lot of people's lives and their art careers because it just opened me up to all these different possibilities that I didn't know. I didn't have to know a particular technique or medium. I could just go, if I'd spend 2 or 3 years, I could develop it up to a professional level, or I could seek out someone else and they could help me fine-tune a project. So it meant I could do anything I wanted to. Not that I've done everything, but it just gave me a sense of freedom.
And how do you manage that? That's now, one of the things you see when you look at artists, say look around Margaret River region, there are artists who are, for example, painting landscapes or something like that, and they're recognised as being, that's the way they manifest their art. Where it sounds like for you, things are a whole lot more complicated.
Yeah, well, I'm basically, everything I do, whether it's oil painting, which I've just restarted in the last 12 months, it's experimental. I don't oil paint like I used to. I take stills off my video work and using caustic wax and repaint into them, and just use the stills as starting points and then turn them into totally different artworks, which is a totally different way of working. So I'm integrating medieval painting, oil painting technology with 21st century digital technology. So it's a different interplay of nearly everything I do. I just try and do something a little bit different, or take it down, because it just engages my mind. I just don't like doing things for the sake of doing them.
Is that a struggle? You've got this idea, you want to explore something, and then you've got your techniques and your methodologies, and you're going, I want to get that idea out, but do you ever feel limited by the materials or the methodologies that you've got available? You've got to do that process of invention as well?
I do, but it's just, I do find limited sometimes, but basically within those limitations, it opens you up to different creative pathways. So sometimes when you, and it takes you down a different road, and these days I only like to do a project as if I'm pushing myself.
Yeah.
Otherwise I move on to something else, because it just doesn't engage my mind anymore. Yeah.
So, looking back, when did you first get the idea that there was such a thing as art?
Probably when I was at primary school. My parents recognised I had something, and they created me a big sand play area, and I spent most of my childhood making sculptural shapes in it.
Yeah.
And my younger brother would come in and destroy them every second day, and then I'd have to remake them, he'd destroy them. So we had this lovely interplay, but until I got sick of it and we started fighting over it.
So when did you start seeing yourself as an artist?
Even when I left high school in year 10, and even when I went to do graphic design at James Street in Perth in the early 1970s, there was still a lot of professional artists, fine artists, still involved in the course. So it was half graphic design and half fine art. So I got a taste of sculpture and oil painting, as well as illustration and design and 3D design and all these things. So it's quite a diverse course, and it's probably opened me up, prepared me for what I'm doing now. But even after I left the course and I tried to work in advertising and design, I still kept going back to art school to develop my sculptural and painting skills. But I suppose I didn't feel like I'd grown into becoming an artist until I shifted to Margaret River, left a well-paid job in Perth, and broke the way I used to work, or I was conditioned to work by society and my parents, and just started working lots of part-time jobs and developing my artwork. But it evolved over time. It took, with a young family, it took about 4 or 5 years. And it wasn't until my early 30s when my mind started wanting more, is when I went to university for the first time.
So do you think there's anything particularly special about Margaret River as an artist?
There is, for me, there was 2 things. I wanted to live, as a young adult, young artist or young surfer. I thought the perfect lifestyle was you'd go surfing in the morning, do your artwork in the afternoon, and then I'd go off to work and work at night. So that went on for a long time. It is a unique place to work, and I do enjoy working here. I have to go away for more, to Biennales and overseas or interstate or Perth, to see a lot of contemporary art. There is a lack of contemporary art being developed or shown here, and any of the good young artists I've usually moved away.
And is that because it's almost too nice? Or is it a lack of a bigger world and people want the bigger world?
There's a bit of a bubble.
Yeah.
And a lot of people shift here, and people who wanted to be an artist all their life become an artist. There's others who have lived here since they were quite young and developed some very good work so they can make a living. And I don't discount that. I think it's wonderful what they're doing. It's just that I chose to work in the contemporary art field when I can. When I can.
Yeah, that's always the perennial question about how does an artist make a living. And
it's really difficult.
Yeah.
I most of the time I've gone to uni, I've had some sort of support or scholarship, or applied for public art commissions or whatever. But it's inconsistent. But we've got by. Yeah.
And you just completed a doctorate?
18 months ago.
18 months, yeah. So tell us a bit about what was that about?
That was another game changer for me, in as far as I learned how to write a little bit, a little bit better. So I do some academic writing as well as creative writing since.
And so this was one of these sort of creative arts doctorates where you had to do a body of work, but then you also had to write about and reflect on your body of work.
So it was 50% written and 50% practical. So it was over a 5-year period, so I developed my video skills and developed several video artworks.
Let's just backtrack. So, and what was it about? What was your thesis?
The aesthetics of a malevolent beachscape, which was a bit comical to start off with. Was when one of my lecturers said, "Look, Michael, every idea you come up is too big," and that's what happens. You come up with. So I jokingly said, "Oh, what about the beach? I like going to the beach." So she said, "Well, come back with a research question," and so that my research question was based looking at landscape, and I'd never looked at landscape as an artist, even though I say that, and I've been revising what I was doing before my doctorate, and I was looking at landscape in a Gothic sense. And when I say Gothic, I only discovered through my doctorate that I was looking at Australian landscape through Gothic art, the darker side.
And so the relationship between Gothic and malevolent, that's where the connection works. And that Gothic is that sort of Edgar Allan Poe or Mary Shelley or that.
Well, it's 19th century European and English literature, artists, poets, writers coming into Australia's early settlement. They came into this weird and strange land with incredibly harsh and difficult terrain and landscape, and they had to find a language to describe it, and that's what a lot of the early people used. And even in this contemporary Australian cinema and writing, it's still flowing through Australian consciousness and art, even though we don't really recognise it, but it's there. But what really what was happening when I first started my doctorate was a lot of young men were being taken by white pointers along the West Australian southwest coast when I started in 2010 or 2011, and so that sort of helped set the tone of me developing a chapter called The Coastal Gothic and Landscape and Terror, and that sort of, and that's why in my creative writing now, that's what I want to do, is look at landscape, whether it's in an artistic sense or a written sense, with a more dark Gothic.
And that's a whole new spin on the beautiful Margaret River region.
I know. The Margaret Tourist Bureau I really enjoy when I produce my body work.
And so now you've reached this stage, you're really getting your art career firing again after doing a lot of academic. What's emerging?
I've only been back in the studio the last 6 months because like with a lot of families, I was helping my wife care for an elderly mother-in-law for 7 to 8 months, and so while I was doing that, I got to write a lot. But now that things have moved on, I'm back in the studio, and I basically just want to use my hands because I've been just doing a lot of
Head stuff.
head stuff. So I'm making things again and going through all the works that I haven't finished over the last 7 years, and just redefining them, and as well as looking at how I'm going to take that work with my new box of tools and my new ideas. Yeah.
Good. Best wishes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.